Hey guys, we're super excited about our guest that we have today. One of my friends who I've known for a long time, someone who's making a big difference where he's at, Colin Holba. Colin, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on.
Absolutely. How are things going with you lately?
They're pretty good. It's tough to complain being out in California, but I get to go home to see my wife here in a couple weeks, so excited about that.
Nice. That's legit. And, today I wanted to talk about and focus on, always staying ready and being ready for the next stage in life, whether it's a next job coming up or it's a next phase of life. And I think your story, just in following you for a long time, honestly, and just keeping in touch with you, like your story is a perfect example of that, of someone who you've had, in a lot of circumstances, you've had to wait on the next thing that's coming in your life. And I think a lot of times in our lives, when we talk about our own story, it's easy to, kind of normal. It's so normalized to us because we're the ones living it. And so it's almost becomes just a normal thing. But I think your story is pretty cool, and just the things that you've overcome and to get where you are today. And so I just want to jump right into your story and maybe go back to high school when you were playing high school sports. What was it like? Grew up playing a lot of different sports. Baseball is kind of your focus. Did you know that you wanted to focus on football long term, or what was your focus as far in high school?
So when I got to high school initially, I kind of had gone to my high school's camp when I was in middle school. And they, at the time in 8th grade, my coach really liked me, really wanted to make sure I would go to that school and not one of the other schools around. So I was actually able to play baseball in 8th grade, and I didn't play football in 8th grade, but I had a lot of contact with my football coach too. So really going into my freshman year of high school, I was really excited to play both. My whole dream, my whole goal going into high school was just to play D1 sport. I didn't care what position I played. I didn't care what sport I played. I didn't care how I got there, but that was sort of my goal. And as time progressed throughout high school, it really wasn't looking good for either sport. And I just wasn't having as much fun. There was just some chemistry differences between football and baseball. And I just really enjoyed playing baseball a whole lot more with my high school team, with my friend. I had more friends on the baseball team. I connected better with them, had a better relationship with the coach for baseball. And so after my junior year, I decided I was going to focus on baseball because I wasn't getting a ton of interest for either sport. And so I just kind of wanted to put all my eggs in one basket going into my senior year and just put my very best foot forward. So really it was just, can I play D1 when I started high school? And then it turned into, can I just continue playing sports at all?
Yeah, for sure. And so going into your senior year of high school, for most, football players or baseball players, that's a big year for getting recruited. And so you actually made the decision to not play football. What factored into that decision?
So it kind of, me and the coach that was actually recruiting me, or not recruiting me, but, wanted me to come. We kind of didn't hit it off very well. He didn't like that I played baseball. He thought that it was going to kind of be I'd play baseball one more year and then I'd pick football. So I wasn't super stoked when I chose to play both the whole time. There was just some stuff that didn't sit well with me, and I just wasn't even having fun playing football. So I was benched as a junior on the JV team after going 3-0. Because I started calling my own plays. I was to clear it up. I was a quarterback in high school, so I started calling my own plays on the JV level.
That's amazing.
In my head, they were working because we were winning, but I got benched for that, and I was already mad. I was on JV as a junior, and so I just wasn't having fun with it. So I decided I was going to see what baseball had to offer when I looked at that full time.
That's great. That's a great story. So then you decide to go to University of Louisville. And when you go there, so did you try to play baseball at first? Because you actually ended up being an equipment manager. So what was your plans going to play baseball? Were you trying to play or were you going to be a manager?
So what I told myself was, and I graduated high school at about 6'3", 175, so super skinny, super lanky. And I had gotten hurt at the start of my senior year. I had a little bit of elbow, because I was a pitcher. I had a little elbow problems. And so I was telling myself, if I get in the weight room, I see what, this program's all about, from firsthand experience, see what I'm really getting myself into. I told myself I was going to go in as a manager, and then I was going to walk on my sophomore year. So I went into college fully thinking that I was going to be an athlete my sophomore year.
As a baseball player.
As a baseball player. What I didn't plan on was I figured I could lift and get stronger. I had no idea how I could take my 83-mile-an-hour fastball and get it up to about 93. Because at the time, U of L's pitching staff is still just unreal.
Right.
Since I started college, they've always had a guy that can throw at least 100.
That's insane.
And so it was at that point that I was like, yeah, there's no way that I'm going to get
So you're a freshman at University of Louisville. You're an equipment manager. What does an equipment manager even do on that? What's your role?
So for baseball, they kind of did it two ways. There is the laundry aspect. I was doing guys' laundry. I was feeding I was hitting fungo. I was shagging. I was running bases. I was so at U of L, they kind of had half their guys as practice players and half their guys as video stat guys. So because I had the background of high school baseball, I was kind of a practice player type guy, so I'd run bases, I'd shag, I'd hit fungo, I'd feed the machines. But a lot of it's setting up equipment, making sure that whatever the coach wants to do, that it's going to get run smoothly, that the transitions going from the start of practice to the middle to the end of practice all happen, making sure that at the end of practice the field is clean, making sure all the guys have their stuff. So it's very similar to the managers that you had playing at Mizzou,
right?
Just making sure everything was taken care of. And then during the season, during games, it was more of I was running the video and keeping stats up in the box and stuff like that.
So you're totally in a behind the scenes role in most aspects,
yeah.
And so you're behind the scenes, and then it's October of that year, and you said, you're 175 pounds soaking wet. You're a freshman. And you have this thought, you know what, maybe I should walk onto the football team. You hadn't played in your senior year of high school because you got into it kind of and didn't end up doing that. So, what even made you have that thought? You know what, I'm going to walk onto the football team.
So it's kind of, and it goes, everything about my story, I try to turn back to God, because there's no coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences, but it was just a steady stream of the right people at the right time. So when I went to orientation, my freshman orientation, I actually met one of the incoming freshmen on the football team and kind of hit it off with him and became friends with him. And we had 2 classes together throughout that first semester. And he knew that I was baseball manager. He knew that to me, being a manager was like window shopping. I got to put the gear on, but I never got to, it was never really mine.
Right.
He knew that kind of frustrated me. And I told him jokingly, I was like, yeah, I used to long snap. Didn't really think much of it. And at this point in U of L's career, they had only one long snapper. There was only one guy. If something went down, they were immediately going to the oh crap snapper.
Right.
I call them that because everybody's looking on the sidelines, and the coach, the players are like, oh crap, who's next? So I was like, yeah, I used to be able to do that. He's like, well, if you got a little bit bigger, maybe you'd be able to do it. I was like, yeah, I don't know. And he's like, no, maybe you'd be able to do it. So I was constantly in contact with him, saw him. And again, my plan was to get into D1 athlete shape. So I did start lifting on my own, waking up at 6 a.m. to work out. I was eating a PB&J. I was working out. I'd eat another PB&J, a protein shake. I was doing everything I could to gain weight. And they had just won the Sugar Bowl my freshman year. And he saw the writing on the wall that he wasn't going to ever play. So he was going to transfer out. So he went in at night to go clean out his locker and get ready to leave. And there was actually a paper, legit out of the movies, a piece of paper that was on the front door of the football complex that said Walkon Tryout meeting tomorrow at 8 p.m. If you don't show up, you're not eligible. And so they had just won the Sugar Bowl, and they were really not wanting to have 50 students come to this meeting, so they were very under wraps. But he took a picture of it, sent it to me. Was like, hey, I know we were kind of talking about this, but maybe just go to this meeting and check it out. And so that was actually when I tried out in January. If he hadn't have been transferring, he wouldn't have even been in the facility that night to see that piece of paper.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you end up taking his advice. You go in there, you go to the walk-on tryout in January, and you try out, and you actually don't make it. So
right.
what was that like?
So I wasn't totally surprised. And you know this, so in spring football, you only get 15 practices with a football. And so since it was the spring semester, if they'd had a football at the walk-on tryout, that would have counted as one of their practices. And so it basically turned into, running a 40 verticals. Like, it basically just turned into a pro day type thing without a football.
And you weren't even able to snap then in front of them? Wow.
No. I fell down running my 5-10-5.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I was just like, man, this is not good. But I knew the current snapper. My dad knew him. They umpired together during the summer. And so I reached out to him, and I was like, hey, man, can you just see me snap? So I found out the next day I didn't make the team. Sent the director of football ops an email saying, I appreciate the ability to let me try out. I'll be back one more time. I was like, I just want to be able to try out with the ball one more time just to show you my snapping ability. I was like, I understand my athletic ability is very subpar. And so I snapped one time with their actual snapper, their current snapper. And he told the special teams coach, he's like, yeah, this kid, there's something to work with. He's at this point, I'm probably 200 pounds, maybe 205. So, I'm getting bigger. I'm starting to fill out a little bit. And he's like, you know what, I'm not going to say he'll ever play here, but he's good enough that, he'd get us through a practice. And so when March came and they started spring ball, the coach texted me and said, hey, if you want to try out, meet me at our indoor facility. We're going to be finishing up practice around 6:30. He's like, just come on in. So I literally, this wave of offensive and defensive linemen are jogging out of the facility. They're in full pads. And I'm like, man, these dudes are huge. In the high school team I played with, we didn't have any D1 linemen. I'm just like, these boys are massive. So I sneak my way in there, and one of the guys hey, you're not supposed to be in here, and I almost got thrown out.
You're like a fan or something.
Yeah. And luckily the special teams coach was like, no, I told him to come in here, and I threw the ball, and he got a ball, and he's like, all right, you got 5 minutes to warm up. You could tell he was very just let's get this over with. I got film to watch. I got stuff to do tonight. So I snapped the ball about maybe 5 punt snaps and 3 field goal snaps. And he's like, all right, that's all I need to see. He's like, you'll hear from us when you hear from us. So I'm just like, well, I mean, at least they gave me a shot. At least I was able to, snap a ball this time. I actually got a call the next morning from the DFO. I let it go. I thought it was his number, but I let it go to voicemail just so I could hear. They're like, hey, congratulations, we're going to put you on the team for the rest of spring ball and see what you can do in practice. They're like, this isn't a permanent spot, but, we'll see what you do in practice.
Wow. That's really cool because, it had to be kind of weird your first time after you're used to doing, laundry for some other athletes, and now you're you've switched roles. Now that had to be kind of weird going to the locker room the first time. It's kind of.
Oh, no one knew who I was. I was just this skinny little white kid that walked into the locker room in the middle of spring practice, and no introduction. I was never the only people who I was the other specialists on the team. Yeah, it was just very
Wow. When you got back on the team, did you still think okay, I need to do someone's laundry? Or were you just
No, I was just, at that point, I was like, all right, how do I stay here? Because they told me and they actually ended up, so at the initial tryout, I think 20 guys tried out, and I think 7 made it.
Wow.
And then of those 7, that's not including me. So I would have been 8 of the initial January tryout. So of the 8 that made it, by the time I made it, I think 3 of them got cut. So they weren't lying when said, like, we'll see what you got in spring practice. So, yeah, I was just trying to stick around. I was trying to, when I got there, I literally couldn't bench 185, and I couldn't squat 225.
That's incredible. Wow. And so for people that aren't like huge football fans that don't even know like what a long snapper is, like, your role as a long snapper is pretty high. It can be pretty high stress as far as I had a buddy, his name's Jay Curl. He played in the NFL for a little while. And he told me one time, he said something to the effect of, it's really good when no one knows your name as a long snapper, because that means you're doing your job.
Right.
And so I guess for you as a long snapper, like, what's that been like? Is there a lot of stress associated with that? Or like when you go out every day and perform, I mean, what's that like?
I'm going to sound biased because I am a snapper. And I'm just going to keep it within the confines of the specialist, because I take a lot of pride in my position. There is a lot of importance in it, but by no means am I the middle linebacker or the quarterback, or like, I know that I'm not in 60 to 80 snaps a game.
Right.
So to combine it with the punter, kicker, and snapper, I tell this to people. I say a kicker can miss a field goal in the beginning of the game, but if he hits a game winner at the end, no one remembers. No one remembers that he missed one. And the same thing with a punter. Like if a punter shanks one or has a bad average for, the entire game, but at the end of the game, they need to pin the other team inside the 20, and he hits one and it rolls out the 2. Like, no one remembers that he had a bad game. They just remember that he showed up, when they needed him. As a snapper, if you are having a bad game, there's nothing you can do. Literally, the only thing you can do is what you're expected to do.
Right.
Like, if you have a bad snap and your next one's right on the hip, it's a perfect snap, like, no one pats you on the back, because that's not going above and beyond what was expected of you. That's just doing your job. And to me, that if you don't have the right mindset, that can kind of compound pressure, because everybody else knows, you were a quarterback. If you threw a pick but then led the team down for a game-winning drive at the end of the game, you kind of made up for it. It kind of balanced out. Whereas a snapper, there's no makeup. So your average is like, you are what your average is. Like, there's no outlier really good. There only can be an outlier really bad. So to me, that's kind of pressure of there's no way to make up for doing something wrong. You just go back out there the very next one and do what you're expected to do.
And you said mindset there. I want to hit on that really quick. So, I mean, there had to be – so you make the team and then you start doing really well. There had to be some moments in some ways that you had certain doubts at times where you're like, wait a minute, like, what am I doing here? Like, I just did this and now I'm on the team. Now I'm a Division I football player all of a sudden. Like, were there days where you're like, okay, what am I doing here type deal?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember walking in, and you got to remember, U of L just won the Sugar Bowl. Like, they weren't expected to. They beat a Florida team, and they beat the pants off them.
Right. Yeah.
You had Teddy Bridgewater in that locker when I first made it, first-rounder, Calvin Pryor, first-rounder, Marcus Smith, first-rounder, Devontae Parker, first-rounder. I mean, the list, it was full of really, really, really good football players. And so what actually helped me was being a baseball manager, because I was able to see behind the scenes what it took, like who was the successful baseball players, what their natural talent looked like, and what happened behind the scenes that people didn't see. Like they didn't just show up at practice and have a great practice. Like, it went in the night after practice about their prep for the next day, their prep before the day, the way that they went about their business. And so I tell people that being a baseball manager set me up to be successful as a walk-on, because I wasn't guessing about what I needed to do. I saw guys from a non-pressure situation as a manager, what they did to be successful. And I was like, okay, I can take the good with the bad. Like, he did this, that's really, really good. That's what I'm going to do. He did this, that was very lazy. I'm not going to do what he did. And so the blueprint was kind of laid out for me.
Wow.
But you're right. There were times that I was like, man, like, this dude was a 5-star. Like, he played in the Under Armour All-American game. Like, what am I doing out here?
Yeah, that's really cool. And, I think you then you played really well. You started to do really good. And then I remember I think this was 2017. I remember even just like looking, just because we had stayed in touch and remember looking you up, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like he's one of the top long snappers, one of the top rated long snappers in the country. Like you went from being a baseball manager to now like I'm pretty sure there was one website that I saw like you were the top long snapper that was going to be taking the NFL draft. And so now you go into your, I think your senior year, and there's a potential you're going to get drafted. I mean, what was that? Did you think you were going to get drafted? What was that like to even be like, oh my goodness, the NFL draft? Like what?
So the guy that played in front of me was a 4-year starter, and I thought he was really good. And I went to a couple specialist camps and seen some of the quote unquote premier specialists in the country, and I compared him to them. And so I was like, I felt like he was a pretty good. He wasn't big. He was probably 6'2", about 225. So his size is what held him back. But as far as snapping, athletic ability, he was really good. So he got invited to 3 different rookie mini camps. And so I kind of put that in the back of my brain. I was like, 4-year starter, really good player, really good character guy, great leader, 3 rookie mini camps. I was like, that's not bad. Like, you know, he obviously wanted more, and his goal was to play in the NFL. And he had a job opportunity and stuff, so that he didn't turn that down. So it didn't really work out for him to pursue it long term. But he got the opportunity, he got the phone call. So I was like, if I can just get an invite to a rookie mini camp, I'll be good. I was like, that'll be a nice little cherry on top. And this is going into my senior year.
Wow.
I just played my junior year. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I thought I was pretty good compared to the 10 guys that were at the camp that I went to, but I knew that 10 wasn't the entire group of people. So I was like, if I can just get a rookie mini camp invite, I'll be happy. Like I'll go from walk-on to scholarship to a rookie mini camp invite, get a picture, put it on the IG, and then I'll figure out what's next.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess, what do you do for the NFL draft? Were you the family, or were you like watching TV all days of it, or what were you doing during the draft?
So I didn't want to do anything, but by the time the draft actually got there, I'd gotten invited to the Senior Bowl, I got invited to the NFLPA Bowl, I got invited to the Combine. So I'd kind of built a pretty substantial resume. And the previous 2 years, the snapper that went to the Senior Bowl and the Combine had gotten drafted. So there was a chance. I'd had some workouts with teams. So luckily on draft day, I knew there were 3 teams like very interested. I knew there was one team that basically put their cards on the table, and their coach would come and work me out at Louisville, take me out to dinner. And they basically were like, look, we can't draft you, but you will be our highest priority guy to sign in free agency. And so I knew at the very least, if I didn't get drafted, that I was at least had that contract offer. So when my mom heard that, she kind of ran with an idea of a party, and I was wigged out. I mean, I knew nothing was happening on Thursday. I knew nothing was happening on Friday. So we had people over at my parents' house on Saturday. But I was just a ball of nerves. Like, I didn't want to watch the draft. My buddies I played with were like, no, man, like, you got to watch it. But I just tried to talk to people, and we had the TV on in the other room with the draft on. So that was a high-stress day.
I bet. And so fast forward, we get all the way to the 6th round of the draft. The Pittsburgh Steelers are up. They call your name. I mean, that had to be surreal. What was that even like?
So I actually grew up a Steelers fan. Because I lived in Pittsburgh for a little bit. So I grew up a Steelers fan, and I knew they were interested. So they were one of the 3 teams. I talked to them at the Combine. I talked to them at the Senior Bowl. I talked to them at my pro day. So that didn't come out of the blue. Like, I knew that they were interested in me. I didn't quite know to the extent what they were interested in. And so I get a call from a Pittsburgh area code number, and there's probably 2 picks before they were up. But I get a call, and they're like, hey, is this Colin Holba? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hey, this is Coach Tomlin. Just want to let you know that when we're on the clock, like, we're going to pick you.
Wow.
Like, and
like, is this
everybody's like, what's going on? What's going on? Because I told everybody I knew. I sent out a mass text. I was like, hey, like, if you all could please, like, not text me or call me
Right.
until the draft is over. I was like, I would love that because I don't want any false alarms. And so my phone went off. Like, my agent had called me probably in the 5th round, be like, hey, the Steelers, have a pick in the 7th round. They might take you in. I was like, oh, okay. So if I was expecting to get drafted by the Steelers, I was thinking 7th round. But so other than that call, I hadn't gotten a call. So everybody was like on pins and needles when my phone's ringing. So I walk outside on the porch and I like give them the thumbs up, and everybody's going crazy. And then about 5 minutes later, the pick comes on the TV, and then everybody just really starts going crazy. And then my phone just started buzzing off the freaking hook.
I'm sure. That's amazing. Like what a crazy story. And then I guess to fast forward a little bit. So you get into camp with the Steelers. And I remember I actually had a buddy. He is still my buddy, Denzel Martin. He's been coaching for the Steelers for a few years. He's still there now. And I remember him texting me saying, hey, your buddy just won the home run derby because you guys did like a team home run derby.
Yeah.
Like, is that, I guess all your baseball helped you out in that situation?
Yeah.
So
that was a fun thing to break up camp.
Yeah. So you did that. Everything's going good. And then I guess to change a tune a little bit, you end up actually getting cut from camp from the Steelers. And so that's a huge emotional roller coaster. You actually long snappers don't usually get drafted. I think I saw a stat that I think you were the only 5th of all time. Is that right? Something like, or the 5th?
I think at that time, because there was one this year, there was one last year. So
okay.
I think at the time, 5th, like pure long snapper. There had been a couple guys that were like a linebacker.
Right. But you were, like you said, pure long snapper, only 5 before you, which is insane. And so they draft you, and then not long after you get cut. What was that emotional roller coaster like?
So I broke my very first snap in an NFL game, the first preseason game. I fell down on a punt. I got my pinky stepped on. I kind of broke my finger. So I didn't have as great of a preseason as I wanted. I felt like me and the guy that beat me out were about 50-50. And they had told me going into the 4th preseason game, they were like, hey, like, if you have a good game, like, the spot's yours. Like, they kind of wanted to give me that confidence boost. And so I was like, all right, like, let's have a good game. And I had a good game. It was raining in Carolina, but I had a good game. So I went into that weekend thinking, I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm good for sure. But I was like, you know what? I had my best game of the preseason. Like, I'm kind of trending in the right direction. They did invest the draft pick in me, like, hopefully. And the way that the cuts worked, they made a bunch of their cuts on Friday. I would say almost all, but maybe 6 or 7 of them they made on Friday. And then I guess that Saturday they were kind of going back and forth between, the last couple. So it was late Saturday that I got the call. So it's funny. So you go from, the draft day, you get a call from a 412 area code, and it's the most exciting thing in the world. And then on that Saturday, you fast forward a couple months to that next Saturday, and you're like, hey, no one call me, please, because if I get a phone call, like,
wow.
So then I get another phone call from a unknown 412 area code, and I knew it was going to happen. Because it's basically no news is good news. You just go as normal, but if you get a phone call, then that's not good.
Right. So that happens. That had to be just crazy. It probably didn't even make sense to you at times. Like, how did your, I guess, faith play a role in that? Most people would be like, are you kidding me? And by Matt, you'd have all the different types of emotions. Like, how did your faith play a part in going through something like that?
I just kind of viewed it as, if this was going to be the end of the road for me. Now, I got to take you back to high school because I battled a lot with, my end of my senior year when we were playing baseball. I had a huge identity crisis because I had viewed myself as an athlete. I had, this was always who I had been. This is kind of, this was the front that I put up. Like, this was how my friend groups, like, I didn't have friends because of other stuff. I had friends because I played sports with them. And so my identity in high school was wrapped up completely in sports. And I remember we lost our last game in baseball my senior year. We were at it was at the U of L baseball stadium, and I was just sitting in the parking lot crying because I didn't know who I was. I was getting ready to go to college, but I didn't know, I didn't know who my friends were going to be because I wasn't going to be a baseball player anymore. And so it was at that summer in between my senior year and my freshman year that I kind of struggled with, okay, who is Colin Holba? What is my identity? And so you fast forward to getting cut in the NFL, and my identity was, hey, I'm Colin. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. At the time, it's my now wife, but my girlfriend. I was like, I'm with her. I have all these things that I do. And football is an awesome thing. It's been awesome in college. I've had an awesome experience. But at that point, being told no, it wasn't who I was. And so it wasn't as earth-shattering as, my identity getting ripped away from me. And so my mindset was, God changed my life in college because I had no idea if I kept going back and saying in 2017, if you told me in 2017 where I'd be in 2012, I would have told you you're a liar, you're full of crap, because there was just no way of connecting two dots.
Right.
And so I went back to a verse, Philippians 1:12, and basically is Paul writing to the church in Philippi, and you get later in the book, and it's talking about Paul's in jail, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But he's in jail, and he's talking about how everything that's happening to him is to advance God's word. And so in my mind, I'm like, if I'm going to make it, maybe God wants to bend my knee a little bit, make me a little bit more humble, and say, no, your story is not about what you've done. Your story is about like all that God can do when I'm putting my trust in him. And so I'm not going to lie and say that I was like, you know what, it's okay. Like, I'll figure it out. I mean, I was crushed, it's never good to be rejected and be told no. But just knowing that my identity was in Christ and knowing that, he had gotten me this far, he had put Kyle Todd, the backup quarterback, in my life for that short season, just even start the flow of my college career. And so I just kind of rested on those laurels of saying, all right, if God can take me from crying in the parking lot at the U of L baseball stadium to crying in the parking lot at the Pittsburgh Steelers stadium for two completely different reasons on two completely different magnitudes, he can move on from here.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really cool perspective that you have on all that. And so moving on from your time with the Steelers, so you get cut there, and then the Jags pick you up. And then I think that was in week 10. So you played with them the rest of the year, if I have the timing right. So you did that. And then after the season, you get cut from Jacksonville. And then for pretty much a pretty long time, nothing's happening. You're just kind of hanging out for the most part. And then last year, November or December, you get a call from 49ers. And so what was that? Do I have the timeline right?
Yeah, for the most part. So I actually got cut after minicamp from the Jags last year. But that was very up and down. So my in between the Steelers and the Jaguars was about 10 weeks. And I went on, I think 6 workouts in 9 weeks.
Wow.
But my rookie year, once I got cut, I was pretty mad. I went through waivers. I cleared waivers and stuff. But then I went to the Saints. I went to the Jaguars for a workout. I went to the Giants. I went to Cardinal. Like, I kind of kept on my toes with workouts. And so I was just at that point about Halloween, I was like, all right, like eventually, I'm going to stick somewhere. And kind of in the NFL, you just want to keep your name relevant. Because that's kind of how you get an opportunity is, if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And then after about a year, if you're out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't look good for you. So as long as your name is continuing to cycle through these teams, that's good. So this year happens, though. This past year, I got cut literally the day after minicamp. So about almost a year ago from right now.
Wow.
And I got nothing. My agent was like, go get married. I got married a week after I got cut. He was like, go get married, enjoy your honeymoon. When you come back, I'll have some stuff lined up for you. And in the NFL calendar, the time between minicamp and training camp, nothing happens. Like, all the coaches are on vacation. It's kind of a dead period of the calm before the storm. So nothing happened. My agent knows someone that works for the Giants, so he was able to give me a workout during training camp for the Giants. But that was more of just, hey, I'll do you a solid because you're a good guy. And so from about mid-August until Thanksgiving, I literally didn't get a phone call from an NFL team.
Wow.
So I had signed a contract to get ready to play with the AAF. And they had told me when I signed, they're like, hey, December 1st, like, that's when we got you. So I was like, all right. At the time it was October. So I was like, there's enough time that, if something happens, I should be good. But I hadn't gotten a workout in about 8 weeks. So I was like, I need some money. Like, do I need to start moving on from football and figuring it out? And I'm literally at my Thanksgiving, my in-laws for Thanksgiving. I get a phone call. They're like, hey, this is so-and-so with the 49ers. Like, we're going to bring you out on Monday we're going to fly you out Sunday night for a workout on Monday. We'll send you the travel info. And that was basically it. Like, I didn't know. So all the other workouts, I kind of know. I talked to my agent. It's either a workout or a tryout. Like, it's either like, they're just seeing what's out there, or their guy got hurt, he's playing bad, something like that, and they're going to sign somebody. So I asked my agent. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know why. He's like, their guy, for all I know, is having a good year. He's healthy. Like, I don't know why they're bringing you out. I'm like, all right, like, I don't care why they're bringing me out, but they're bringing me out, so that's good. We get there. It was kind of hush-hush. It was very, very strange. It just didn't feel like all the other workouts. And come to find out that he had tested positive for PED. And so he was trying to appeal it. And during the appeal process, you can play. It's just either when your appeal is denied or when you accept the suspension, that's when, from that point on, you get your game suspension. And so we went out, and he was in the middle of his appeal process, and we found that out afterward. And so they send us back, and they're like, hey, we'll be in touch. I'm like, all right, well, just FYI. I was like, just FYI, I'm under contract with the AAF, and they said that if by December 1st that I'm not on an NFL team, then I can't go. I have to play that season with the NFL, with the AAF. And one of the guys was like, no, we're the NFL. Like, we get what we want.
It sounds like a dating relationship kind of between all these, like, it's crazy.
It is a crazy, crazy, crazy business. And Sundays are like, they're the tip of the iceberg, honestly.
Right.
What fans see on Sunday is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's cool that the AAF didn't, I guess, work out for now, because they're not even a thing anymore. So that's kind of a blessing that didn't go through. And a big part of your story, I would say, just in looking at your life, kind of what you've accomplished so far, is in some ways you're waiting for the next thing. You're in between your, kind of in the waiting room, kind of in transition. And I guess a lot of times I feel like for myself and for other people, we just want to speed things up, and we just want to have control over areas of our life that maybe we don't have control over. And I know I see that in myself all the time. And I guess, what would you say for someone who's listening who maybe is going through something in life where they don't have control, and they're waiting, they're in a period of time where they don't know what's going to happen? I guess, what would you say is some encouragement that you've experienced that you could share with them?
So I would say the two things that I've learned, and I'll turn 25 in a month. So grain of salt of my sage mid-20s wisdom. But the biggest thing, and it's probably the hardest thing, is control what you can control. And for so much of the NFL, and just going off this NFL experience, there's so much that you can't control. I mean, I look at guys, and on one hand, I'm kind of jealous of them. I'm like, man, like, they were just in the right place at the right time. Like, the team that they're on, I talked to their coach, and I was rated as, their number one guy coming out. And I was like, man, if I had just gotten that opportunity, maybe I wouldn't have bounced around. And then I look on the other side, and I'm just like, man, why can't I stick? Like, and so the biggest thing is there's only so much you can control. So for me, it was, I could work out every day. When I was substitute teaching in between teams, I could choose to wake up at 4:30 and work out before heading to class. I could choose to snap. I would go to a youth football field. There'd be 10-year-olds practicing on the other end, and it'd be me and my dad catching snaps. And I was like, man, this looks really weird for a 20-something-year-old to be in a U of L helmet with shoulder pads in September, snapping to his dad. I was like, but I can control that. I can control working out. I can control my attitude. I can control when I go to these workouts that if I don't get put on the team, I don't get discouraged. But hey, I'm right there. I'm still in the loop. And that one, I think, if you can't, what wore me out the most is in the seasons when I was trying to control what I couldn't control. And that just wears you out, because it's like, to me, it's like going to an arcade and playing like the Mario Kart game with a loose steering wheel, and you're trying so hard, like you got a death grip on that steering wheel, and you're overturning and you're running into the wall and you're running into other players, and you just can't figure it out. You just can't like have an easy day. Everything seems hard when you're trying to control everything else. And it just stresses you out mentally, because you're like, man, what could I do differently? Like, you're just not happy. You take it out on the people around you that are loving you and supporting you. And to me, that was the most important thing. And you look back at it, and I think I say this, every single person in the NFL that I've ever met has an incredible story. Some people have different stories, but like our punter that we have right now, he moved across the country in Australia to get a GED to learn how to punt a football, and was about to stay the night on a 24-hour gym's floor just because he didn't have money to pay for rent, because he was trying to learn how to punt so he'd come to the United States, go to a junior college before he could go to a four-year university, just play in the NFL. And so to me, and that's just one of the dozens of stories. So when I got to this level, I'm like, man, like I'm not the only one grinding. I'm not the only one, kind of putting my life on pause in between teams. Like, this isn't just me. And so I'd never felt God shut the door. So I was going to control what I could control. And then my second part to parlay it is be prepared. Be prepared when you're given an opportunity. I say that goes along with being, control what you can control, because if at my first workout I hadn't, worked out and I wasn't in shape and I was snapping bad, I mean, that's it. I mean, these coaches talk, and that, that kind of ends the whole workout cycle, and maybe I don't get that next phone call. So it's just keeping a positive attitude, saying, I'm doing everything I can do. A little bit planning for the short term of, if I get called now, like we'll do this, but then also having a plan in mind of what, if sometimes God does shut the door. And I've met a lot of guys, as I think you have too, just through the route of sports, who find their identity in their sport, and they just don't know when that door that they're trying to open is locked.
Right.
And so the biggest thing to me is A, control what you can control, but B, listen. Like, have some quiet time, have some meditation, put some feelers out there, because if God's trying to move you in a different direction, it's not a worse direction. It's just He has you, pegged for a different spot.
That's really wise. And on Instagram, someone reached out today and had a question for you. His name is Joe Narin, and his question was, if you were at the end zone and you had a football, how many yards could you snap a football?
Is this with the wind or without wind?
Let's go with the wind.
With the wind. So I've actually never done a trick shot video.
We should line that up.
So I've not, because my job is to snap it right on the punter's hip at 15 and right in his hands at 8, and I don't ever want to jack that up. I know how quickly my golf swing gets wild, and so maybe when I'm done playing in the NFL, I'll do a trick shot video. But I think the farthest I could snap the ball with the wind, probably 35 yards.
Wow. Holy shit. That's crazy. Wow. And so what's that?
I said maybe. I know I can throw it 75.
I think that's even more impressive. So, and so a lot of times you kind of hit on it earlier, when you were, as a manager, you're learning what are best things? What are the things that I should be focusing on that these baseball players are doing that I can then translate to football? I think in some ways a little bit of delayed gratification. And, obviously you're around guys who make a ton of money, have huge contracts. And sometimes, the statistics show that a lot of NFL players, a lot of professional athletes in a few years they've lost all their money. But then there's some that are really wise, and you probably wouldn't even know that they're an NFL player if you saw them on the street. And so I guess, what are your thoughts on delayed gratification in football, but even in life and having success?
So I'm actually reading this book. It's called The One Thing right now. And the basis of it is, what is the one thing you can do today that by doing this will make everything else either easier or unnecessary? And it's kind of a complex sentence to break down, but to me, it lines everything up in that, am I playing football to be a celebrity and to live this rock star lifestyle, or am I playing football because I enjoy it? Absolutely. I love the camaraderie of a locker room. That's one thing that is definitely something I miss when I'm not on a team. Man, not being a part of a locker room that's tough.
Right.
And so I love that. I play for the competitiveness, but I've never looked at it as I want to drive a G-Wagon and have a Gucci suit and all that stuff. And if that's what you want to do, if that's your motivation, great. Find whatever motivates you to play your very best. But it's what are your priorities, and what is the one thing you're trying to get out of playing football, out of a relationship, whether you're married or dating or something like that. What's the one thing you're trying to get out of money? If your sole objective with money is just to have a good time, well, then a lot of people achieve that objective. If your one goal with money is to save and be able to live a great life as retirement, set out those goals. But I think a lot, like, it all goes back to what is your main priority, whether it's football, whether it's a different job, whether it's money, whatever it is, that is a very telling factor of how you're going to spend your time, how you're going to spend your money, how you're going to treat people. And that's the one thing that I've kind of noticed is you see where people's priorities line up, and how they act and their decisions they make in the short term and in the long term.
And last question here, we ask everyone that comes on the show this question. At the end of your life, when you look back at your life and when you're gone, what do you want people to say about Colin Holba? So
I kind of had this mindset when I was at U of L, not the death mindset, but I went into it with a very immature mindset of, once I kind of got my sea legs under me and I kind of established my role on the team, my mindset was, I want them to notice when I'm gone. Like, I want there to be a distinct, man, I miss Holba. When I wasn't in the locker room, whether it was my leadership, my work ethic, my play on the field. And that was kind of my mindset going into my junior year. I was really starting to fill out my role. I was starting to be elevated of a starter and be an older guy on the team, an upperclassman. And that was my quote unquote immature view of looking at it. Of, man, I want to be so impactful that they miss me. And then going into my senior year, though, my mindset was, I want to be so impactful that when they see the other specialists, they see guys that I hung out with on the team, they saw me in those guys. And so my mindset went from, I don't want them to miss me. I want my impact to go further than my time here on the team. And then it became, if I can see characteristics and traits that I established, in 2016, in 2020, then I know that I did my job. And then I know is when I had an impact on Louisville football. And so I guess that's kind of how I hope my quote unquote legacy is in life, in that, I hope that people see my good traits in my grandkids or my great grandkids, that, it's not them feeling be like, man, I miss Holba. I want them to say that, but I want them to be able to be like, to look at my grandkids or look at my kids and say, man, that's Colin Holba's son. That's Colin Holba's granddaughter. Like, and we can feel their presence and their impact because of him through them.
Wow. I think you're definitely on the way to doing that. So that's incredible. And man, thank you so much for joining us. And I think we're all really excited to watch your career. And we're going to, in our show notes, we're going to have a link to your Instagram so people can connect with you. But any last words of advice or encouragement for people listening that maybe are kind of in a rut where they're at in life?
I would go back to control what you can control, because for me in college, that was a huge source of stress, and stress is just it hurts you twice, because either it does happen and you're stressed about it and then you're mad that you were stressing about happened, so then twice you get upset, or you stress about it and then it doesn't happen and then you just wasted all that time and energy. So I would say control what you can control, but also pray and spend some quiet time to listen, to try and see where God is putting you. I think, and you could say it's easy for me because where God called me out of my comfort zone, it led me to the NFL. And so people can perceive that as, wow, that's such a cool story of getting pulled out of your comfort zone into the NFL. Oh man, like,
right.
Had it rough. But to say that is when God pulls you out of your comfort zone, he's always going to put you right where you belong. Like, God didn't create you to have these passions and these desires and these, if you're a people person, God's not going to call you to be an accountant. He's going to call you to go interact with people. But sometimes you just need to get out of your comfort zone. You need a little nudge. You need to go someplace where you generally wouldn't, to make a connection you probably weren't going to see what all's out there. Because a lot of times, when you're younger, when you have so many opportunities, it can be overwhelming. But ultimately, we all know what drives us. And if you can connect what drives you to what's available to do for a job or for a hobby, God put those desires in your heart and those passions in your heart so you can advance his name in that way. And if what you're doing currently isn't fueling your fire and isn't advancing God's kingdom, he's probably going to push you in a different direction. And the more you struggle, the more you fight, the harder it's going to be.
That's a great way to end, man. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and have a good, great summer, and then have a great next season.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.